I want to talk about the history of application security over the last like 60 years or so. The reason I build this talk is because I know many of us working in the world of information security, you're stressed out. You're feeling overwhelmed. People don't always listen to your advice. And the progress that you see around you is slow at best. So most people that I know who work in information security, and I mean people on the front line doing pen testing, doing security analysis, people who are corporate security officers, the common thread that I see is that they're very stressed out. They're not listened to, and that things are not advancing as fast as we would like them to. Anybody agree with that? Anybody feel that at all in their work? A few people? So I'm not saying what we do is not easy, but it's all about perspective and context. And what I've seen is that, my grandfather was a professional historian. My father was into history, and I like it as well. When you zoom back and look at the history of application and information security, it's a very different perspective. And I think it's a very positive message that we are making dramatic progress. We are helping solve these security problems. And in many cases, we are making the world a safer place. But it's all about perspective, and that's what I want to show you. So this is a very extremely abridged history of application security, that things really are getting not just better, but they're getting a lot better. My name again is Jim Manico. I've been a professional software developer for 30 years. I'm an educator, and I volunteer a lot of my time for the OWASP Foundation in a variety of different projects. Who cares about me? So let's go back to ancient times, right? When did modern information security really start is what I want to ask. And I think it really starts in the late 60s. In October of 1967, there was a task force organized by the Advanced Research Project Agency to study and recommend computer security safeguards that would protect classified documents in the US. Now, the report of this task force, which functioned under the Defense Science Board, this was published by the RAND Corporation. You know the RAND Corporation? They're like a weird, creepy, pseudo-government think tank that would be like where James Bond villains would come from. Anyways, so this is like about February of 1970, and the Office of the Director of Research and Engineering, Department of Defense, was tasked to publish this report, one of the first security reports in history on the state of information security. Guess what that report said about the state of computer system security back in 1967? Anybody have a guess? Yeah, it was pretty messed up. It was bad. It was basically, there is no security. And what they're saying is, if we start taking these government systems that are protecting classified data and we put them online in any way, even a modestly resourced adversary would be able to break in. So this is a wake-up call. Like, we're starting to really build modern computer systems to run the world. And it's not that the security is bad, is that it doesn't exist. And this was the first big wake-up call that we need to start doing security testing across all the systems that run the world. And so what were so let's look at the history of security testing. The very first security pen test kit in the world was from the Alan Turing's team, the bomb. This is saving the free world, cracking Enigma. Do you know what the bomb was? Was it like an advanced piece of software? What was the bomb? How did they make it? Yeah, but what physically was it? Like when I do pen testing, I'm using a computer and software, right? What was the bomb? Was it an advanced piece of software? It was hammer and nails and physical switches. When they wanted to set new codes, they literally click different physical switches. It was literally made as a physical construction, hammer and nails and cranks. And ain't no advanced software. I mean, a little bit of software, but it was a physical device built to crack what at the time was one of the best encryption devices in the world. This is where security testing starts. Hammer, nails, metal, and wood. This is back, like 1938. By the way, who created the technique in the bomb to crack Enigma? Was that Was that Turing? No, it wasn't. And I have a lot of respect for Alan Turing. He saved the free world. But do you know who actually created the technical methodologies to crack Enigma? It was a Polish researcher who then got like pushed to the side. It's like Wolski. And so it's like some of the real heroes of modern security testing, they're lost in history. And again, I'm not trying to attack Alan Turing. He did great stuff for the world. But go look at your history. The real researcher was a PhD from Poland who discovered how to crack Enigma, the actual mathematics behind it. And he's lost in history, but he saved the free world. Let's move on. I forgot his name because he's lost in history. Anyways, moving on. 1965, we have William Matthews from MIT finding security bugs in Multics CTSS. This is the first multi-user computer, and the password storage file, the heart of security for the system, was like a text file that anyone on the system could print out. This is not the greatest security of a multi-user operating system. Let me switch my perspective here for a second. There we go. 1972, James P. Anderson produces the first security testing report evaluating the federal government, the Anderson report. It even sounds creepy, but this is like one of the most modern advanced reports that got declassified. And again, guess what the summary of this report was? There's no security, and this is going to really be a problem in the future. We got to get working on this. The Air Force starts modern security testing in the US in 74. In 1979, the first static analysis tool comes out. What's static analysis? This is the heart of application security. This is a specialized compiler that looks at your code with the rule system and will tell me if there's security bugs theoretically in your code. Today, these tools are incredibly advanced. Back in 79 is when the first code scanning tool came out, right? In 1998, this is great. This is Jeff Forrestal publishing an article in Frack Magazine 54. This is on Christmas Day, 1998. A very famous security hacker and researcher known as Rainforest Puppy. This is when the term SQL injection was first used in a publication. It's now 25 years later. Who here is a professional hacker? Who found SQL injection in software within the last couple of months? Yeah, we've known about this for like 25 years, and I see like at least 50 people like, yeah, I found SQL injection, point SQL map at it, and that you own the database. So again, we've known about this for 25 years. We still struggle to fix this problem, but at least statistically, SQL injection back in 98, that was like a feature. It was built into everything. If we look now 25 years later, finally, statistically, SQL injection has begun going down dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years. Do you know why? What do programmers need to do to stop SQL injection? Not sanitization, not validation. They have to use a specialized technique called query parameterization, variable binding. It's an obscure technique, but it's the only way to stop SQL injection in code. And we've been screaming about this for decades. And finally, about 4 years ago, statistically, SQL injection, which is going up for 2 decades, began to drop down significantly. So it doesn't seem like much, but to me, it's a big deal. The OWASP top 10, this big top 10 list of risks where we measure all these security vulnerabilities, finally, SQL injection is ticking down dramatically because we have frameworks and techniques like query parameterization to really stop this. Let me jump ahead here a bit. 2001, WebGoat comes out. WebGoat changed the world because here's the first big open source platform to test your ability to hack a web application. And this is significant because now, among all the security people I knew, we had a common platform to talk about how to hack applications. It became part of our daily conversation in the hacking community of web applications. Metasploit comes out in 2003. Who uses Metasploit in their work today? How effective is Metasploit at testing systems? testing, not as much anymore. Back in 2003, it was like world class, and a lot of like corporate executives were extremely angry at Moore for releasing this because when it first came out, it was massively effective at testing and attacking real systems. 2009, we have DevOps starting at Etsy in America, where for the first time we have automated security testing as part of how a business operates from the ground up. And now we're looking at threat modeling as a manifesto and all these modern tooling, and DevOps is the norm. So again, where do we start? We started with security testing with hammer and nail and wood and physical switches, with construction people building this giant monster device to crack Enigma. And today, what do we have? Automated turnkey tools driven now by AI that really allow us to do advanced security testing at a great scale. So that's how things have changed over the last many decades. And the difference is dramatic. The progress is dramatic. So now we have security testing at GitHub. I can flip a switch and turn on a DevOps pipeline. We have code scanning and dynamic attack tools for testing that are AI enhanced, that are really for the first time. A lot of the security testing tools we use, in the last decade, I think the advancement of security testing tools has slowed down. And I haven't, up until a few years ago, like the whole 2010s, I didn't see much major advancement in the security testing tools we use as professional testers. Now, in the last 2 years, AI is kicking in. And I'm looking at the first generation of AI security testing tools. In fact, the US, forgive my US-centric BS here. I mean no disrespect, Sweden. Just bear with me. There's 2 big laws that have come out about AI. There's a presidential order from the US government in October of 2023, and the EU has the EU directive on AI, which has not been fully published yet. It's near the end of that round. It takes a little time to get things going through the EU, right? A lot of people need to chime in. There are 2 big worries about modern governments when it comes to AI. Number 1 is biological warfare. I can throw a lot of organic chemistry books into an AI system and say, hey, how do I make a chemical that will kill someone in 30 seconds? And they're like, oh, no problem. Do you want me to shut their lungs down? Do you want me to kill their heart? I'm like, whoa. So like using AI to generate biological weapons is a big fear, and rightfully so, for the EU and US government. And guess what the second big fear is? It's computer security testing. Because AI is pretty new for all of us, but the early capabilities of AI in security testing, it's very quickly going to eclipse human capacity, and that is scaring every major government on the planet, because federal governments traditionally don't do the greatest job at security. But we see a lot of maturity in this area. DevSecOps is now hitting a point of really deep maturity. The tools that we use for security testing are becoming supercharged with different AI tech. We're looking at exponential growth of the capability of these tools. And again, the difference is like night and day when you look at the last couple of decades. This is a very exciting time to be a security professional because of this new era of advancement that we're seeing in the last couple of years, in my opinion. Let's go take a look at HTTPS for a second. You know HTTPS, right? It's a transport security protocol that drives the whole web today. It's the heart of the secure web. If you go back to 1994, this is where HTTPS was invented. Do you know what the certificate authority system is and why it's so important? This is the heart of HTTPS. Someone tell me, why is the CA system, the certificate authority system, so important to the security of the world? Anybody want to play? It's trust. For example, when we're doing we're doing a TLS handshake, how do I know if the initial public key in that handshake is from the right server? I could be man in the middle, give you my public key, and the handshake continues. And that's one of the biggest problems of HTTPS. So some engineer at Netscape who created this protocol was like, how can I prove that the initial public key in a handshake comes from the right party? And they're like, yeah, let's do some kind of certificate signing system. So the entire certificate authority system that is the foundation of trust for the whole web today, it was created as an afterthought and a hand wave, just kind of threw it in at the end. Yeah, let's do a CA system. And now, decades later, this runs the whole world. The point I'm trying to make is this protocol, HTTPS, it was a total piece of garbage when it came out. It was written quickly. A lot of the foundational principles of cryptography were not done well. The infrastructure was neat, but the protocol was a joke, and not everyone used it well or completely. Around this era, a lot of people would log in over HTTPS and then drop back to HTTP because HTTPS was so expensive. This is where web security started just a couple decades ago. Now, in 1999, we have TLS 1.0. This is the first legitimate version of HTTPS. All the SSL versions had major cryptographic flaws in it. They're dead, and they've been dead for a long time. In 2006 and 2008, we see the next two versions of TLS come out. TLS 1.0 and 1.1 are well broken. TLS 1.2 is the only version of TLS from this era that is still a viable choice today. And if we look at 2009, SSL Labs, for Ivan Ristic, they released this tool, SSL Labs. This lets me publicly evaluate any web server in the world around how well their HTTPS is being built. When this tool came out, I was like a kid in the candy shop. It was so much fun. I'm on Twitter, and I'm posting the SSL URL of every security company in the world and their grade of how well their server was configured. And it was like F, F, D, F, B, F, F. It was really bad. To the point where one of the heads of a company called Cigital starts calling me out on Twitter, starts like writing articles about what a jerk I am. Oh, I love this stuff. And so I keep going. I'm like, hey, maybe you should like actually do something about it. So I have all the heads of all these companies because I'm publishing that their main server of their security company with the most critical protocol to run their security is an F. And instead of fixing it, they're attacking me on Twitter. Oh, I love this. I love drama. I love it. And so Ivan Ristic, the guy who built this tool, decides to chime in and said, hey, sir, hey, companies, I have a suggestion. Instead of attacking Manico on Twitter, why don't you spend your effort and go fix your freaking server? And everyone kind of left me alone. So I love SSL Labs. It's like the de facto standard of evaluating HTTPS on your server. In 2010, Chrome starts to preload HTTPS, or strict transport security. So now we have some of the initial Google sites, you may only visit them over HTTPS. And then Firesheep comes out. Remember, in this era, a lot of websites would log in over HTTPS and then drop back to HTTP, where I can hijack a session. Firesheep was the best. I go to a coffee shop, run Firesheep, and take over anyone's like email, Facebook account, and similar. I would never do this maliciously. I only did this when I was given permission to do so, of course, right? So in 2011, we see forward secrecy show up in the crypto algorithms. And finally, in 2013, TLS 1.2 is live in most browsers. Let's Encrypt shows up in this era. And by 2016, about half of the web is HTTPS. 2017, certificate authentication becomes mandatory. And 2018, Let's Encrypt is giving out free certs. Whoa, the difference is night and day. We look at 1994, and HTTPS and the authority system was created as a hand wave in a very like an afterthought, not serious engineering. And now today we have like Chrome now defaults to HTTPS when you type in a domain. 99% of every single page loaded by Chrome OS is HTTPS, and Mac OS it's like 97%. And you go back to 2015, it was like 45%. SSL Labs is still the dominant evaluator of website security, and the difference is night and day. If you zoom in and look at these problems today, there are things we have to fix. But if you zoom out and look at the history over several decades, we have made dramatic improvements in everything in information security, and there is a great hope for a better future when it comes to protecting the assets of the world, which is our job. How much time do I have? How are we doing? Let's talk about password history. I love passwords, right? And so the very first password-based system is 1961. This is the MIT CTSS. It was led by Fernando Corbato, one of the first managers and creators of a complicated multi-user operating system. He was way ahead of his time when it comes to software development, operating system development, and security. A lot of the things we hold dear, like multi-user access control, isolation of critical data by a root level user, password storage, cryptography, all the advances that we take for granted now, this is all Fernando and his team back in 1961. In 1966, Alan Scher becomes the first password hacker in history. He was a manager of this team. He could use this brand new computer anytime he wanted, and he was using it for his research. He was about to be demoted back to a normal student, and he was about to lose his privileged access. So he printed out the password file and took it with him so he can get unlimited access to this computer. And he got a little bit of trouble for this, but he's one of the very first real hackers in all of history by printing out the password file. 1970s, we see the first real password storage algorithm, right? We see Crypt3. This is M209 code from World War II. This is a pretty crappy algorithm, but it's the first example of modern password cryptography, and not just a hashing algorithm, but really it's the beginning of modern salting and all the other techniques we need in a modern password algorithm. 1978, Crypt3 is now released in Unix. It's DES-based, it's DES-based, and again, it's got stretching, salting, and a more formal password policy. So this is like almost 50 years ago when we first see initial password storage, password cryptography beginning to be done well. And now, 1980s was kind of like a dead zone of security. 1991, we see MD5 coming out with the 128-bit hash value. MD5 is not the best way to store a password, but we see the initial foundations of modern algorithms. We jump ahead to like the year 2000, PBKDF2 comes out, and they do something remarkable in this era. The PBKDF2 is a password-based key derivation function that's good for password storage. The actual underlying cipher, the underlying algorithm, you can swap it out and replace it over time. So this is the year 2000 this idea was created, and if you look ahead to today, 24 years later, this algorithm is still used in many federal governments around the world because of the ability to enhance its underlying cipher over time. It was really well thought out. And now we look ahead today, PHP is now using like Argon 2ID by default, right? So Argon 2ID is today's modern password storage algorithm. And you can configure a lot of things in it. You can configure how much CPU time it takes out. You can configure the amount of how many threads in the CPU can process at one time. You can configure the memory it uses to really enhance it over time as computing power gets bigger. And Dr. Akaway from Dropbox publishes a famous article around how to use these algorithms correctly. And now if you look at PHP, it natively supports really good password storage, one of the first languages to do so. So here's a really famous article, still a viable article from today if you care about password cryptography. Argon 2ID is everywhere, and this algorithm, we have a cheat sheet at the OWASP Foundation that explains how to configure this surgically with today's computing power and how to enhance it over time. So we're not just giving you like a good algorithm from the industry, but really specific advice at both OWASP and the IETF and other foundations of how to really use it correctly. Now, I like Argon 2 ID, but one of the other heads of the password storage competition, he prefers bcrypt. He didn't like the choice. So all these cryptographic judges voted on the algorithm, and every single judge voted on Argon 2 ID except for one, Jeremy Gosney. And so this is my little tweet, right? I like to do a little poetry. I'm a bad poet, so I don't like bcrypt, and that's a fact. Argon 2 ID is where it's at. The 72-byte limit of bcrypt can kiss my ass. Low RAM usage, no thanks, I'll pass. It's a weak algorithm in my opinion. Now wait a second, oh no, I'm not done, hang on. So here's Jeremy Gosney, who's the head of the password storage competition. He's like, well, Argon's a KDF and that's no cap. If you're doing real-time auth, you need bcrypt in your app. No thanks. Memory hardness has no meat, it's all fat. For resistance and acceleration, cache hardness is where it's at. I'm like, oh no. I'm now doing a Twitter poetry slam battle on password storage cryptography with one of the heads of the password storage competition. This is great. This is the best part of my life. This is Jeremy Gosney, a software architect, famous cryptographer, contributor to Hashcat, one of the password storage competition leads. I'm like, oh, Jeremy, it's on, right? So Argon 2 ID won the password competition. For password storage, you need a little revision. Now, bcrypt truncates. You know it's a fact. It's a shitty limit. It's easier to attack. Argon 2 ID has better password cracking resistance. Hey, Jeremy, I'm here to help. Here's a reference. So I remember he like texted me. He's like, oh, Manico, go screw. He's like, go screw yourself. It's on, dude. Say, hey, which one of us is the cracker? It seems you forgot, and a Hashcat developer, I think you are not. And the password competition, hey, I was a judge for that too. With all these credentials, who is OWASP to argue? Hey, buddy, the other judges outvoted you, and 1 + 1 still equals 2. Yeah! Kiss my ass, Jeremy. Whatever. So, no, this is Jeremy is a great human being. He's one of my good friends. And by the way, you can talk about PHP, but it has natively supported Argon 2 ID since 2018, right? A lot of people don't like PHP. It's kind of a crap language, but yeah, it is. Sorry. I just did. But again, they're usually one of the first programming languages to support modern cryptography and modern advancements in web security. So I applaud them, but I still use other languages. All right, anyways. I got several more. This is a very dynamic presentation. How much time do we have?
You got about 10, 15.
I'll do one more. Let's look next at OWASP project. No, let's do cross-site scripting history next. Cross-site, anyone care about cross-site scripting in their work at all? Yeah, this is something if you're a security tester, you should be able to find this in pretty much every web application you're testing. It's a hard problem to solve. Now, Microsoft coined the term cross-site scripting back in 1999. And so in 2002, Microsoft in IE6, the worst browser in history, supports HTTP only, a way to stop JavaScript from reading your session cookie. This is a huge advancement, the first attempt at defense. So 2004, Robert Hansen, known as R-Snake, he proposes something called content restrictions back in 2004 for the web that turned into a critical standard today called content security policy, right? And so 2008, we see Sammy attacking MySpace, the first cross-site scripting worm that blue screens the global infrastructure of MySpace because of this little attack, right? And so 2006, Amit Klein talks about DOM XSS, and around 2010 and beyond, OWASP starts releasing production class libraries to do output encoding and to handle cross-site scripting defense. 2024, Chris Christoph releases trusted types in Chrome, a really modern advancement for JavaScript attack prevention. Now, I want to show you one more little story here, right? We have trusted type shows up from Chris Christowitz. We have the HTML sanitizer API to do HTML sanitization. It's now integrated into the browser at like an alpha state. But there's one big problem with CSP, and that is freaking Safari and Apple. Every other browser is on board when it comes to modern web standards. But Apple needs to do their own thing. And they're always the last to the party to support web standards. And really, Apple can kiss my ass because of this. They really upset me because we need all the browser vendors to agree to these web standards. That's why we have the W3C. We talk about this. Apple shows up. They participate. We agree on it. We're going to build the standard. And then Safari's like, I don't feel like implementing it. And it grinds me because they're slowing down the secure web. And my conspiracy theory is like they do it on purpose. But that's just when it's late at night and I'm tired, had a little bit too much wine. But anyways, so here's my tweet, right? I believe that Safari's lack of CS3 support, this is called strict dynamic, and similar W3 standards is a reason to boycott Safari and stop using it. I see Safari as a browser that impedes the modern secure web. Edge, Chrome, Firefox have all supported CSP3, strict CSP, for years now. So why not Safari? I'm open to counter opinions. So Philippe de Rick from Belgium is like, hey, I agree with you, Jim. Safari is a dominant part of the web, and we need them to play ball. Okay, thank you, doctor. And so, and I'm like, look, I'm not trying to harass John. He's the head of Safari's security team. He's good people. I believe this is above his pay grade. And all of a sudden, John chimes in. Sucker, got him right into the, yes. I'm now luring in one of the heads of browser security at WebKit and Apple to participate in my bash on Twitter against Apple and Safari. And he's a great, he used to work at a Swedish bank. He's a Swede. He's one of your native people. And I'm harassing him on Twitter terribly. I feel a little guilty. So, and John's like, when John started chiming in, I did a happy dance because I knew drama on Twitter. I love it. So don't worry. John says he wants to see CSP3 in WebKit. And he'll forward the feedback in good faith to his team. Yeah, whatever, John. So all of a sudden, right after this, Lucas Weichelbaum jumps in. Hey, to Apple and says, hey, would you accept pull requests? So that Weichelbaum, who's Weichelbaum? He's telling Apple, if you're not going to fix this, we will do it ourselves. We'll fix it for you, Apple, since you're not willing to fix it. Anyone want to guess who Lucas Weichelbaum works for? He works for Google. He's a senior staff engineer at Google telling Apple, hey, and he's also one of the heads of the standard body for CSP3. So John chimes in, hey, we'll talk about it. Google shows up and is like, hey, we got funding. We'll fix it for you, Apple. And behind the scenes of Apple, the executives are screaming at John, like, you're going to let Google fix our product? What's wrong with you? So now all this drama's at Apple. I'm talking to the Google leads. They're like, Jim, is this okay? I'm like, no, this is the best. So Google is getting funding to help Apple fix Safari. Oh my, I'm so happy. This is like, life is good. So all of a sudden, John, oh yeah, we take pull requests. WebKit's open source. It's not just Apple building it. You know, Sony does tons of work. Who cares? We haven't expressed opposition to CSP3. So this is where John's getting screamed at behind the scenes by his bosses. You're going to let Google fix Safari? You better fix it yourself with your team. And Lucas is like, oh, thanks, John. What's the opposition? Blah, blah, blah. And thanks for explaining, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I get a private message from Apple, and they're like, an important correction on this topic. Kate Cheney, who's an Apple employee, she's going to start implementing CSP3 in Safari right away. Yes, this is awesome. And then John tweets me about a little bit later. I like to make an announcement. He tags me personally. WebKit and Safari 15.4 is going to release strict dynamic. And I'm like, and behind the scenes, Google's like, dude, I never thought that being a complete jerk on Twitter would help make the world a more secure place, right? And so, I'm super happy this all went down. I love drama. I'm not a drama queen. I'm a drama king. So I love this stuff. And I really want to thank everyone involved. John Weilander, who's one of the best people on the planet I know. He's sweet, right? He's a great man. He really cares about security. He's doing his best at Apple. It's not easy to work at Apple with all the political BS going on there. I want to thank Catherine Chaney, who implemented strict dynamic in Safari. And I especially want to thank the troublemakers at Google, Lucas Weisschulbaum and Michelle Spagnuolo, who got funding to help Apple fix Safari. Didn't need to use it. And I'm like, hey, you got the funding. Can I have a piece of that? And they're like, no. All right, so let's finish up with this. So 2024, cross-site scripting, auto-escaping templates are the norm. CSP3 with strict dynamic is now easy to deploy and live in all major browsers. Why? Because some of us were acting like jerks on Twitter. Yes, Trusted Types is live in frameworks, and DOM Purify is native in the browser now. AppSec is global, and what's the future? Ancient alien stealing time, maybe not, but the future of AppSec is bright. I'm a fan of AI and what it's going to bring to our industry. It's going to enhance our capabilities. We have the Federal Government Modernization Act. We have the EU initiative on the safe use of AI. We have enhancements to NIST standards around identity, usable crypto in the cloud and frameworks and libraries everywhere for the first time in history. Microservice security at the cloud is enhanced. Zero trust is more than a buzzword now. It actually means something in architecture. America might actually roll out a federal privacy law. We're working on it. We have it in a few of our states, but GDPR has been a dramatic positive force to privacy across the world. United States needs to catch up. The software bill of materials is now standard. Threat modeling is becoming automated instead of consultant-driven. Rust is a system level, Rust for system level federal systems and critical infrastructure is replacing the complete and total crap that is C and C++. DevOps is becoming more advanced. And again, zero trust everything. If you look at history and take a step back and look at the advancements over the decade, you're going to see that we've made dramatic progress. But you know what the real future of information security is? The future of application security and information security is you, for being here, for caring about this conference, and for participating in the community. That's my story. Thank you all. Enjoy your Security Fest, everybody.
Super nice. It's always such an energy explosion. Really pleased to have you. So should we do some questions? Are you up for it?
Yeah, totally.
If this is a Swedish crowd, though. Anyone have any questions?
I'm Sicilian.
Dare to ask?
Same thing.
Come on, do it. Just once. Prove me wrong. Good.
What you got? I love your mustache.
AS 5.0 or the next version?
We are like the four of us. ASVS is the application security verification standard. We have been working on it for, and the main folks working on it is Josh Grossman and Elar Lang are the two active people right now. I'm third in activity. Daniel Cuthbert is doing some more like administration for us, and we're struggling a bit, because we have a lot of personality clashes. We've been doing a lot of arguing lately, and some of that's bled into GitHub, right? Elar is from Estonia, and I'm from Sicily originally. We've been butting heads a lot. But that conflict is breeding a better standard, right? It's just we're so passionate about getting these requirements right. We are having like a deathmatch argument over whether to recommend URL encoding to put data in a path versus base64 URL encoding, which is the JSON Web Token standard. And Elar and I just spent 3 weeks debating this. It got personal. We began attacking each other on GitHub. And at one level, this is bad. But another level, I love drama on the internet, so it's good because we're pushing the standards to the limit. I think it's going to go a lot. We're nearing the end of the cycle. I'm guessing the next version of the standard will go live by the end of this year. But as we're getting near the end, we're struggling because we're getting into the minutia of these requirements. There's a lot of passionate people involved, and it's gone from like a relatively peaceful group of people working on requirements to a lot of infighting right now because we all want to win, and it's a struggle, to be honest with you. So, I'm trying to, and all jokes aside, I'm trying to step back a bit and like, let's acknowledge everyone's requests and say, look, let's recommend this or this or this. Elard doesn't agree with me, and he's like fighting. So Josh is taking over the last couple of weeks and is like making some hard calls for us. Again, at one level, this is bad. Another level, we care. And we're really debating some of these important requirements because URLs and validating a URL, that drives server-side request forgery, open redirect attacks. It's a way to bypass React and other frameworks. So getting URL handling right from a developer point of view is really critical in my mind. So I'm really pushing those requirements personally. Once we get that done, we'll be close to the end. There's a long answer to a short question.
Good one. Anyone else? One more?
Yes.
You have one over here.
What's up?
If funding was, which domino would you tip to get like something pushed further into development or like securing bigger?
If funding wasn't an issue, like I need about, I would request about 2 billion euros. I'll take cash or check, by the way. You don't do checks in Europe. I'll take cash or gold bullion, right? So what I would do is I would get every major government in the world together to hire a team of developers to start managing the security of the third-party library ecosystem. I think that's the way I could do, if I had real money, and I've been actually petitioning some of the federal government agencies to do this, do Homeland Security, that you can print $1 billion pretty easily. Please give it to me so I can build a task force to focus in on third-party library management because it is such a difficult problem. It's unsolved. And many of the top third-party libraries that we use across the world that drives trillions of dollars worth of business, they're doing almost no security assurance in the project itself. And this is, in my mind, this is one of the biggest unsolved problems in software security today.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Cheers,
Manico.
everyone. Thank you.